Watch right now on the Front News Project. Explosion 6 kilometers from the Kremlin. Friendly drones disrupt the victory parade of Bessia. Preparations underway for May 9th on Red Square. The Russian army is retreating. Exclusive footage of real battles. And an unexpected surprise for Putin. Ukraine and Poland are launching joint drone production. Fiery, intense, and blazing footage from the front lines. Watch right now. Greetings, this is Vladimir Timoshenko with you, and we're starting right away with the main topic. Air defense systems are being pulled into Moscow from all over Russia. Machine gunners are stationed on the Kremlin towers. Putin is preparing for the victory parade madness and clearly does not feel safe. And are the armed forces of Ukraine preparing for this event? They are preparing and for now just zeroing in. Just recently, a friendly drone crashed 6 kilometers from the Kremlin. At the same time, President Zelensky announced that Ukraine is declaring a silence regime for the night of May 5th to 6th. All the details, let's watch.
Hooray!
Putin managed to turn the May 9th parade from a Russian triumph into a march of shame and fear.
A clash with neo-Nazis, Banderites, on whom the U.S. and their junior partners have placed their bets, will be inevitable. Russia delivered a preemptive response to aggression.
Ukrainian birds are flying all over the center of the Russian capital.
Can you hear that sound right now? Listen closely. Oh, right there. There it is, right above my house. And
The closer it gets to the parade, the scarier it becomes.
This will be the first time there will be no weapons at the parade, and Ukrainian drones might fly in during the parade.
Air defense systems are being brought into the Russian capital from Kazan and Grozny to protect the parade, and they plan to create several layers of defense.
Can you imagine? It's a nightmare. But that's not all. The sense of
Security around the entire capital. There are checkpoints at the entrances. Access to Red Square is blocked. Right next to the Kremlin, there are armored vehicles and SUVs. And on the walls and towers of the Kremlin, there are machine gunners. There's even a security officer with a machine gun hiding on the Spasskaya Tower of the Kremlin. Putin couldn't have imagined, not even in his nightmares, that there would literally be people on every tower wall and just about every building of the Kremlin. Special forces soldiers will be stationed with machine guns, sniper rifles, and special equipment, anything to keep Ukrainian drones from reaching the bunker dweller. The system set up on the rooftops of high-rise buildings turned out to be ineffective, and Muscovites are fleeing the city en masse.
Against the backdrop of this terrorist threat, of course, all possible measures are being taken to minimize the danger. And
These are the consequences of a Ukrainian drone hitting a high-rise building in Moscow. Just 5 days before the parade and only 6 kilometers from the Kremlin. As we can see, the air defense systems hastily pulled into the city center in a panic did not help.
Merry Christmas, hello? One. Two.
As it turned out, the Ukrainian FP-1 made it through 3 layers of air defense. On this map, there are 101 confirmed air defense positions, and the route itself passed through the area of responsibility of at least 10 S-400 regiments, as well as dozens of installations. Panzer and Tors, which are so highly prided by the bunker dweller. At the same time, memes about preparations for the event are actively spreading online. Ukrainians are joking about heightened security measures and generating amusing images. We will defeat Ukraine. 2 days before, the war reached right up to the capital of the Russian Federation. And while Ukrainians laugh at this absurdity, Putin is tearfully begging Ukraine for a ceasefire on May 9th.
Imagine a version of Stalin who, in a phone conversation with President Roosevelt, suggests to Hitler to arrange a ceasefire on November 7th. There you go. Well, so to speak, in honor of accordingly the great holiday. Even Vitaly Averyanov, the deputy chairman from the Borsky Club, said, "How is that supposed to work?" Yes, it makes sense. On May 9th, after all, the topic of Ukraine's denazification was supposed to be raised. Supposedly there were heirs of Nazism there, and to call on, as it were, the heirs, the spiritual heirs of Nazism, to unite for a ceasefire on May 9th.
Back at the beginning of April, the Kremlin dictator was informed about the dangers of holding the May parade. Pro-war blogger Ilya Tumanov, known as Fight Bomber, said that the authorities were discussing where to hold the parade at all, in Moscow or in St. Petersburg.
Can you imagine, at the moment of the parade, when everyone is standing at attention, a missile alert is announced? And then what? What will happen? Obviously, the image will be disrupted, you understand? And what will be happening on the square and around it?
Well, that would be quite an event, and of course it would be a significant blow in terms of media coverage. So I even think that maybe nothing will actually reach there, but something still has to be done.
The parade rehearsal has still not been announced, even though it is usually held at the end of April. Rehearsals always used to start in Alabino, but even in the training grounds group, where the preparations are covered every year, there is nothing except for the reduction of some parts of the event in
achieving strategic goals, in solving tasks for the sake of Russia, its greatness and prosperity. Glory to the victorious people.
Putin has demilitarized the victory parade. According to the Ministry of Defense's statement, there will be no heavy equipment, which has always been present at the parade. Only cadets will march in formation.
Students of the Suvorov Military and Nakimov Naval Schools, Cadet Corps, as well as a column of military equipment. Due to the current operational situation, they will not participate in the military parade this year.
In the underpasses on Tverskaya Street, they put up supports just for show, and they were blocking the road for the passage of that very heavy equipment.
Red Square is being intensively prepared for the events, but the number of guests has been greatly reduced. This is evident from the stands. As for the general rehearsal, the date of May 4th was announced, but these dates keep changing.
The sky will be closed. The most that Russians will see this year are the Swifts, who have always participated in the aerial part of the victory parade, while their show is still being considered. In Moscow, they are planning to shut off mobile internet during the May holidays.
Everything is going according to plan, according to plan, according to plan, according to plan, just according to plan. Right on schedule.
Only a small number of leaders will attend this parade. Yes, I realize that this year, without Xi Jinping as a kind of umbrella, the Kremlin is especially vulnerable. As we can see, Putin is trying to avoid public humiliation, above all in the eyes of his own people. But so far, he hasn't succeeded.
Well then, now we move to the Pokrovsk direction of the front. For several years now, the fiercest battles have been raging. In the Pokrovsk direction, the occupiers tried to advance 14 times in the areas of various settlements. Rodinskoye, Udakhnaya, Novopavlovka, Novo-Alexandrovka, Molodetskaya, Novo-Nikolaevka, and Muravka. And at the same time, for the first time since 2024, Russia has begun to lose territory in the war with Ukraine. In April, Russian troops suffered clear territorial losses in the war with Ukraine, losing control over an area of 116 square kilometers. Rather than dealing with a constant barrage of loud and overwhelming noise that disrupts your peace and quiet throughout the entire day, you can choose a much more serene and tranquil environment instead.
In widely announced major offensive, there was a retreat and loss of positions. April 2026, a month the Russian command will try to forget. According to the Institute for the Study of War, the occupiers not only failed to advance, but also lost approximately 116 square kilometers of territory. This is the worst result since August 2024, during the time of the Ukrainian Armed Forces Kursk operation.
At the moment, in areas without active combat, the front lines are almost the same as they were a year ago. This indicates that the defense forces of Ukraine, they not only stopped the further advance of the occupiers, but also successfully counterattacked in several sectors of the front. We are talking about the successful actions of Ukraine's defense forces in the Dnipropetrovsk and Dobrovska regions.
The statistics speak for themselves. The average speed of the Russian troops' advance has dropped to 2.9 square kilometers per day. A year ago, this figure was 3 times higher, almost 10. And over the past 6 months, Russia has managed to capture only 1,443 square kilometers compared to more than 2,360 during the same period last year. In other words, the pace of the offensive hasn't just slowed down, it has collapsed. There are several reasons for this. First, the strikes by Ukraine's defense forces on enemy depots, headquarters, and logistics. Second, communication problems. Restricted access to Starlink in the occupied territories and the Kremlin's control over Telegram have significantly complicated the coordination of units.
Ukraine's defense forces are successfully holding back the occupiers' advance in the Pokrovsk direction. The occupiers' offensive in this sector of the front has already been ongoing for more than 18 months.
But Russia is trying to convince people otherwise. One of their tactics is the so-called gray zones. Territories where there is no stable control are presented as if they have been captured. Analysts from the Institute for the Study of War note that Russia's actual control is much less than what propaganda claims. However, at the same time, the very tactics of warfare are also changing. As the British publication The Telegraph writes, Russia is gradually abandoning mass assaults. These so-called meat grinder tactics resulted in enormous losses. The enemy is now switching to a different tactic.
Small groups of 2 to 4 soldiers and sometimes even lone soldiers advance on foot, often at night, with minimal radio communication. Their task is to find weak spots in the defense, infiltrate deep into the positions unnoticed, and establish a foothold there. Experts note that such groups are harder to detect and destroy than larger units.
Despite attempts to adapt, the key trend for Russia remains negative. The effectiveness of the offensive has been declining for several months in a row ever since the end of 2025.
Despite all the statements from both the Russian political and military leadership, including at the highest representative level, about full control over Kupiansk and Kupiansk, these settlements remain under the control of non-occupational forces. Specifically, they are held by the defense forces of Ukraine.
An additional blow to the enemy comes from Ukrainian attacks on economic and logistical infrastructure. In particular, ships belonging to the so-called Shadow Fleet near Novorossiysk, which were used to circumvent sanctions and export oil, were recently struck. And while the Kremlin tries to conceal its failure, the front increasingly reveals the real picture. Russia is losing momentum, territory, and initiative.
Well then, now it's time to analyze the operational situation on the Kramatorsk and Konstantinovka fronts. The enemy is becoming more aggressive here as well. On the Kramatorsk front, our defenders repelled 2 enemy attacks in the areas of the settlements of Nikiforivka and Verolyubivka. On the Konstantinovka front, the invaders carried out 10 attacks near Konstantinovka, Prishchevka and Stepanovka. Ukrainian weapons may enter the global market in the near future. President Zelensky announced a new model of cooperation with partners, the so-called drone deals. What exactly and which types of weaponry is Ukraine ready to bring to those global markets? And what restrictions exist in this regard? More details about this in our next report.
Weapons made in Ukraine may soon appear in the arsenals of many countries. Ukraine is preparing to become an exporter of next-generation weapons. We're talking about drones, missiles, ammunition, and military technologies that have already proven their effectiveness. In modern warfare, the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, stated that the export of Ukrainian weapons is now just a matter of time.
The export of Ukrainian weapons will become a reality. We have agreed on all the details at the level of state institutions.
The key idea is the drone deals format. These are special agreements with partners that provide not only for sales but also for joint production, technology exchange, and the integration of Ukrainian solutions into the defense systems of other countries. In other words, a comprehensive approach will be implemented, covering everything from supplying drones and munitions to software and military expertise.
Today, the Ukrainian military-industrial complex has a rather diverse list of equipment types that are not in such high demand in the combat zone, or they are needed, but there is a surplus thanks to our well-established domestic production. And it would be quite rational and logical to use this category of products for export abroad.
At the same time, the government promises to simplify procedures for businesses. Automation of permits is planned, less bureaucracy, but with strict control. The conditions are set clearly. First, supply the Ukrainian army and only then export the surplus. As Zelensky states, the surplus production capacity for certain types of weapons reaches 50%. It is precisely this surplus that they plan to sell. According to the president, this is the result of large-scale investments in the defense industry and cooperation with partners.
In particular, today we are among the leaders, not just in Europe, but in the world in the production of anti-aircraft drones and interceptor drones. We can afford to enhance Ukraine's own reputation and establish new contacts, export this product even abroad. This also applies to maritime drones, which have proven themselves very well in terms of controlling the Black Sea, and they can be used by other countries.
However, Ukraine will not sell weapons to all countries. A list of countries is already being prepared where exports will be strictly prohibited due to their cooperation with Russia.
Right now, the maritime drones, yes, they continue to perform their functions in the Black Sea, of course, but the production lines are not as heavily loaded or utilized as before. In a sense, they are even standing idle, not operating at their full capacity. Therefore, exporting such products would allow the industry itself to diversify and revive, and significantly expand the possibilities for producing new models with different functionalities.
The coordination of the process will be handled by the National Security and Defense Council, while the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff will determine the volume of needs for the Ukrainian army. At the same time, Ukrainian authorities admit that in the midst of war, it is impossible to fully open up exports.
But today, on the battlefield, we don't see enemy equipment being destroyed as often as before. With systems like the Javelin, NLABU, or the Ukrainian Stugna-P, in turn, the production of the Stugna-P should have a specific defense order, and it should be regular. There are countries in the world that are interested in purchasing our anti-tank missile systems. For example, Middle Eastern countries.
The former head of the main intelligence directorate and current head of the president's office, Kirilo Budanov, also supports this idea. But again, they note that you can only sell what you truly have enough of. For example, naval drones or outdated models of unmanned aerial vehicles that are used less frequently at the front but may be of interest to other countries. A separate challenge is the protection of technologies.
Any export product that Ukraine will export will, first and foremost, have reduced specifications. These will be completely different technical and tactical characteristics compared to the original product. Secondly, stealing and trying to copy is a completely different matter when there is already an established production line and the ability to constantly improve and modify. By the time Russia tries to do anything, even if this equipment or weaponry falls into its hands and it attempts to copy or reproduce it, Ukraine will already have the next generation of this product.
Today, Ukraine has unique wartime experience, and this has already become a kind of brand on the global market. That is why manufacturers are urging a focus on innovation, particularly on artificial intelligence and new control systems. In this way, Ukraine is trying to turn its combat experience into an economic and technological resource. But the main balance remains unchanged. First comes the front and only then the global market.
And now, let's move to the Huliaipol direction of the front. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred target for Putin and his entire gang. Accordingly, the situation here is extremely tense. 19 enemy attacks have been successfully repelled in the Huliaipol direction. In the areas of the following settlements: Zaliznikne, Horke, Starukrenka, Yelena, Konstantinivka, Yablokove, Svitopetrovka, and Charivne. One clash is still ongoing. And here is another extremely important topic. Another lie from the Russian occupiers. The claim about the capture of a settlement important to both warring armies, Mala Tokmachka in the Zaporizhzhia region, does not correspond to reality. This is yet another fake from Putin's propaganda. And we will show and prove this to you right now. Please.
A new settlement in Zaporizhzhia is on the front pages of all news outlets. Another failure of the occupiers at the front was Mala Tokmachka. There are quite a few small settlements in eastern Ukraine where Putin's army has been breaking its teeth for years, but this one deserves special attention, as the number of its so-called liberations by the Russians is already countless.
Belousov declared a significant step toward victory in the special military operation. The Minister of Defense congratulated the Russian military on the liberation of Mala Tokmachka.
Meanwhile, Russia's defense ministry considers this settlement at the general staff level, viewing it as key to defeating Ukrainian forces entirely.
The Minister of Defense said exactly that. Mala Tokmachka, he claims, is a serious step toward achieving the goals of the special operation. Without any sarcasm.
Recently, people have started talking about Mala Tokmachka because of the memes that this settlement has generated online. The thing is, on propaganda shows, a certain pseudo-expert named Rozhin has been starting his military reports with it for about a year now. And every time the Russians are supposedly just about to take control of it. Journalists didn't get lazy and put together this kind of compilation.
Good evening. What are the news?
Good evening. Speaking about the situation on the front line in the Zaporizhzhia direction, our troops have achieved certain successes in the area of Mala Tokmachka. There were also battles on the outskirts of Mala Tokmachka. There were also battles in Mala Tokmachka. Fighting also continues in the area of Mala Tokmachka. Fighting also continues on the outskirts of Mala Tokmachka. Fighting also continues for Mala Tokmachka. Our troops also have made small advances in the southeastern part of Mala Tokmachka. Fighting also continues for the southern part of Mala Tokmachka. There is also fighting for the southeastern part of Mala Tokmachka. The assault on Mala Tokmachka continues. There is progress in the area of Mala Tokmachka. There is also fighting in the area of Mala Tokmachka.
And this is despite the fact that officially Mala Tokmachka was liberated a long time ago. And Putin even congratulated those involved. In reality, most of the village is under the control of the Ukrainian armed forces. About a third is in the gray zone, and only on the eastern outskirts have the Russians managed to barely hold on to some houses on the edge.
The fighting is non-stop, and it's bloody fighting. They keep pounding the same positions over and over. Attempts by the Russian army to break through the front line in small infantry groups result in the deaths of hundreds of Russian soldiers every single day.
This happens in different ways. Mostly through the use of FPV drones. However, Ukrainian scouts often visit those very houses as well. Naturally, they don't come empty-handed. It's funny, but even the triumphant reports on Channel 1 can't be listened to anymore, even within the Z community. There, people openly say that after a year of attempts to take over this small village, thousands of soldiers have already died without achieving any real results.
Today we're operating in small groups basically, right? The question is, can we liberate with these small groups? Slavyansk, Kramatorsk, Kharkov, Zaporizhzhia, force the Dnipro. Can we do this in pairs or not? No, look. And now here's the question. Is it worth losing dozens of pairs every day if we can't? By the way,
the Russian command did attempt to capture Mala Tokmachka with a massive assault. At the beginning of spring, they sent several armored groups and dozens of contract soldiers into the attack at once. As a result, this has so far become the most high-profile failure of the Russian offensive in 2026.
The Ukrainian 118th and 65th Brigades, with the support of other units, they destroyed 2 tanks, 12 BMPs, 6 BTRs, and 2 Tiger armored vehicles. That is 22 vehicles out of 26. A complete rout. Not even the powerful shaggy armor in the latest style helped.
The reason for such desperate attempts by the enemy, it's clear, say the Ukrainian Armed Forces Command. This is the road to the strategically important settlement of Orikhiv. That's why several lines of defense and powerful fortified areas were built here, which allowed Mala Tokmachka to become a symbol of a strategic dead end for the Russians in Zaporizhzhia.
And now an analysis of the operational situation on the Lyman and Sloviansk fronts. The Russian world continues here as well to destroy, kill and maim. On the Lyman front, the occupiers continue 2 attempts to advance in the area of Yampil. On the Sloviansk front, the defense forces successfully repelled 2 attacks in the areas of the settlements of Koreva Luka and Reznikovka. Meanwhile, Poland is on Ukraine's side. Military support and cooperation are being strengthened. Kyiv and Warsaw are launching joint production of drones. The Poles don't trust Putin and are preparing to fight him. Don't believe it? And now, please watch our upcoming segment.
NATO is falling apart while Poland is getting closer to Ukraine. After a brief cooling-off period, Kyiv and Warsaw have begun to strengthen their military cooperation.
The greatest threat to the transatlantic community is not its external enemies, but the ongoing destruction of our alliance. We all must do everything necessary to reverse this catastrophic trend, to turn it back.
Poland, once America's closest European ally, is taking a sober view of Donald Trump's statements and actions. As the North Atlantic Alliance falls apart from within, bilateral cooperation and alliances are coming to the forefront.
There is no doubt that in such highly turbulent and uncertain times, when the global geopolitical landscape and structure is shaking to its core, bilateral agreements become much more of a critical priority. Agreements based not so much on rigid ideological platforms, which are themselves crumbling and losing their relevance, but rather on pure, calculated pragmatism.
Not being a NATO member, Ukraine has become a world leader in the production of military drones and various unmanned aerial vehicles.
The Polish plan to create a drone army will be implemented with the support of technical developments and expertise in the field of drones from our Ukrainian friends. Poland must have an armada of drones so that we can not only help Ukraine today, but also confidently assure Poles that we are safe.
Warsaw, like never before, is interested in Ukrainian developments, technologies, and the experience of military personnel and engineers, thanks to whom Kyiv has been resisting the Russian military machine for 5 years now, and has also been astonishing NATO military personnel during joint exercises.
At that time, 10 UAV operators were able to conditionally strike up to 2 battalions of personnel and disable up to 50 units of armored vehicles. The simulated enemy, which accordingly was a cold shower for the leadership of the North Atlantic Alliance. According to
Deputy Minister of National Defense of Poland, Cezary Tomczyk, Poland is counting on the creation of joint drone production facilities, scaling up technological exchange, as well as the opportunity to test its own drones and military equipment in real combat conditions on the territory of Ukraine.
This is the application. This includes the use of FPV drones to destroy enemy personnel and equipment, as well as, accordingly, the use of interceptor drones to destroy aerodynamic weapons. That is why the Polish side's interest is not accidental, especially considering the fact that the Russian Federation is constantly raising the topic of a possible invasion of Polish territory. From the territory of the Republic of Belarus to create the so-called Suwałki corridor.
During this period of transatlantic turbulence, it is precisely Ukrainian technologies and the combat experience of the armed forces of Ukraine that have become the main and stable guarantor of security for the European continent.
That's all for today, but very soon on Front News, there will be new, unique reports from our journalists in the hottest spots of the war, obtained so that you know the truth. This was Volodymyr Tymoshenko with you. Take care of yourselves and your loved ones.